Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the best free premium tools on the entire internet for helping you win your fantasy basketball league. Go check them out right now, #basketball.com. I'm your host, Mike Catron, and joining me as always is my co-host, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Michael, is there anything you'd like to say for yourself?
Yes. Denver is a great city, and everyone should visit. It's a good time. A lot of good breweries out there, and yeah, that's all I would have to say. Is that what you were talking about, Tyler?
Oh, Michael, the shame.
Not sure what else you could be referring to.
So everyone knows the anticipated matchup of the week in the Dynasty League. It was Mike against myself.
It could be some shenanigans because I do feel like Tyler is in charge of the matchups, and I think he waited till I was going to be gone on vacation to set up the matchup between me and him so he could win.
I don't even know if you can use that excuse. I demolished you in like every category. They weren't even close.
Yeah, it didn't go well. It could have gone better.
You should still make the playoffs now. Like, come on. You got a good team, but you did not fare well this week, my friend.
I was just phoning it in. That was my bad. I know when I play against Tyler, I need to step up my game, and you know what? I didn't do that, and that is my fault. You really outdid yourself in quite a few categories. You snuck by on steals, but that's about it.
Well, and here's the other thing too. Like, my team was a little bit banged up this week too, so I'm feeling pretty good about it because Draymond missed some time. Jimmy Butler obviously missed some time with the crazy trade, so I'm still feeling pretty good about it.
That's true. Huge news over the weekend, the Jimmy Butler trade, and we're going to get right into that and talk about Jimmy Butler to the Philadelphia 76ers. Does this make the 76ers the best team in the East, second best team in the East, third best team in the East? Are they in the same spot as they were 2 days ago?
Well, so I don't know that this made the team really that much better. I don't know that it really made it any worse, though, either. I mean, they gave up 2 starters to get 1. Now, granted, Jimmy Butler is a top 15 player in the NBA, but from a real basketball perspective, like, they hurt their depth quite a bit, and their power forward options, which I get that there's not too many like true power forwards out there anymore, but their power forward options are not great now.
Yeah, they're kind of running a weird team, but they were running a weird team in the first place. And I think if they can figure it out around Jimmy Butler, now granted, his style of play is not perfect with Embiid and Ben Simmons, but I have a feeling someone as crazy and focused as Jimmy Butler is going to figure it out. It's more that is he going to come in on that team and act like he owns the team like he did at the end of his years in Chicago and also as he was doing in Minnesota? Is he going to clash with those guys, especially Embiid, who's not afraid to talk shit? Or will that like actually help where him and Embiid will go at each other, make each other better, you know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot to be told. And I mean, people, that's the pontificating thing is like, oh, are they the best team in the East now? Well, even if it made them the best team in the East today, there's a long way before we decide who the best team in the East is. And there'll be a lot of things that affect that, like injuries and other trades. And I would definitely say Toronto's still the deepest team in the East.
They've been the most impressive team for sure. I still think Toronto's the team to beat, but now Philly has an asset that allows them to go at Boston and the Raptors, where beforehand I think they could play with them, but maybe they couldn't go at those two teams. But this trade has a lot of fantasy impact. So I want to talk about the entire trade. The Sixers get Jimmy Butler and the legend Justin Patton, who's played like 7 minutes, I think, in his career. Turns out not better than Lowry Markkanen. Turns out, probably a bad trade for them.
Has he really been healthy? Like, I mean, he's had that foot injury
like every year.
Yeah, so
2 years.
I don't really know what to say about him at this point. So
yeah, I have no idea if he's good or not. And to me, that means he's not. You know, if I can't even tell you. But the Timberwolves received one of our favorite fantasy players, a beautiful Bob Covington, who under Tibbs minutes could see something interesting. But we'll break that down here in a little bit. They also got Dario Saric and Jared Bayless in a 2022 second round pick. Tyler, let's start on the Sixers. And let's just start with the guy who we've said this before, so it might be a little bit quick. Jimmy Butler, no matter, we've said this basically everywhere we thought he could go. The Sixers, I don't think we ever thought about him on the Sixers, but every place that we thought Jimmy Butler could go, we just didn't see a world where his value would decrease very much at all.
Yeah, no, and we'll talk about maybe he plays a minute or two less a game when he's not playing the crazy Tibbs minutes.
Yeah, probably going to play like 32 minutes a game.
So we could talk about that maybe decreasing his value a tiny touch. But other than that, I mean, I think he's Jimmy Butler. I still think he's going to get you darn near 20 points. And I think people are worried about that because they're like, oh, they got Embiid and Simmons, like blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, Simmons only scored 15 points a game last year. So to have two guys that score 20 and a guy who scores 15 is not that uncommon.
I'm going to regurgitate my Houston take in that when great players, and I'm going to call Embiid and Ben Simmons great because they are, when great players play with other great players, they make each other better, not worse. And the only exception to that is LeBron, but I'm not going to get into a LeBron hate rant. Jimmy is going to be more open. They're going to have to throw different defensive looks at Jimmy because they're also going to have to guard Ben Simmons. They're also going to have to guard Embiid. Embiid's pretty much unguardable. Ben Simmons is pretty close to being unguardable. So I think it makes each one of those guys a little bit better having another threat on the floor like Jimmy Butler. I think even though with the decrease in minutes, Jimmy Butler's still going to get his. Maybe you drop him down a rank or two, but like at that point, it's not really I don't think I'm not trying to sell Jimmy Butler right now. I think he's going to be perfectly fine. I'm trying to get Ben Simmons. He's going to have someone who's actually competent to pass to, more competent than the very streaky Bob Covington. Anyway, so all these guys, I don't see really taking much of a setback. Maybe some touches from Ben Simmons, but I don't see any of the major players here taking a setback.
Especially in Philly, no. I mean, I think those three are all going to be great, and the one that'll get pointed to will be Embiid. But if you're following Embiid's season so far, like he's off to a crazy hot start, and he's just taking an inordinate amount of shots and has a very, very high usage. So it'll get pointed to that, oh, he got hurt a little bit by the trade, but really it'll just be some natural regression in numbers that weren't sustainable through, well, their first 12 games.
Yeah, and if you go listen to our Sell High podcast from last week, I believe we did talk about Embiid as one of the characters who is a decent Sell High candidate. Let me verify that. Yeah, we did. All right, good. I remember what happened last week. There was a lot of substance abuse in Denver, so I'm trying to make sure I remember what actually happened in our podcast last week. So nailed it. Embiid definitely Sell High candidate because of the way he's playing, not because of the Jimmy Butler situation. Let's talk about some of the outside characters on Philadelphia. Markelle Fultz probably hurts his usage, though. I'm not sure I was terribly excited about having Markelle Fultz on my team at this point in the season. Anyway.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see which way they play that starting lineup now because Fultz is not a great shooter. And obviously I think they're going to ask Jimmy Butler to do the kind of playmaking Fultz was doing. So do they move Fultz into that 6-man role, which is probably the best spot for him now? And they probably should put Redick in the starting lineup over Fultz. It'll be interesting to see if they do that or how Coach Brett Brown wants to play that.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is a good excuse to be like, all right, the Fultz experiment is over. Jimmy Butler is Jimmy Butler, and he's going to play. And Mark Hill, he's kind of in your spot, so you're going to come off the bench, and you're going to get to and like hopefully that's like a good like marketing excuse why to move Mark Hill out of the starting lineup, and not saying what you need to come off the bench because you're not that good. So hopefully that works out and gets JJ a little bit more playing time. I agree with that. I'd like to, if JJ isn't owned in your leagues, he should be, because he's worth owning in a standard league right now in the first place. And with a little bit more playing time available for him, you'll see a little uptick in minutes for him. That will be good.
And they could also start them both. I mean, that's kind of an underrated thought here. And obviously, so their power forward options right now is obviously they could play Simmons there, but he's really going to be the point guard on offense. Or they could play Wilson Chandler or Mike Muscala. Those are kind of the two other options they have as power forwards. I would think it would be Wilson Chandler, but we don't really know. And Wilson Chandler's missed a lot of games so far this season. Now he's finally healthy. But we saw a kind of bad Wilson Chandler last year in Denver. We've seen some fairly decent seasons from Wilson Chandler in the past. I would say both those guys are kind of speculative pickups such that they take that power forward role and run with it. I'm not really sure which way that's going to go at this point. I'm not really even sure Mike Muscala would be worth holding if he did get the starting role and got the lion's share of those minutes. I think Wilson Chandler probably would be, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen yet.
Yeah. My bet, if I had to bet, is Wilson Chandler is going to take some more those Sarge minutes. But is that really something I'm going to gain value from? Wilson Chandler, like we said, Wilson Chandler hasn't really been terribly relevant in the last couple of years. Depending on his situation, and I would say even though his situation is going to get better in Philly, I don't think it's going to get good enough. I don't think he's going to play like 32 minutes a night, which would make him borderline relevant in a standard league, I guess. But I mean, why am I wasting a waiver wire pick on someone like that in a standard league when I think there's probably better guys out there?
Well, I mean, here's the thing to say about it. When he's played 30 minutes, now obviously we'll save last year, but he's shown that he can be a decent source of points. He'll get you some decent rebounds. He hits some 3-pointers. He shoots a relatively good field goal percentage the last 3 years. And he gives you like 0.7 steals and like half a block. So, I mean, they're not great numbers, but I think that, and especially in a league, 12 teams that everyone's really paying attention and the wire's a little bit thinner, or especially in deeper leagues, to get that guy for free, that's definitely a worthwhile pickup.
Yeah. I mean, if he's available, it's not the worst pickup in the world, right? If you're going to get someone who's going to give you some, if you're in a deeper league and you're going to get those minutes, and minutes are minutes, and they're the most important stat that we look at here in fantasy basketball for the most part. I just think if I'm looking, depending on your waiver wire, he's not my first choice. I'm not burning my top waiver on him.
We've seen some really good waiver wire guys kind of pop up here in the last week or two too. So, I mean, I'm definitely not saying he's my top pickup, but I would say there are some leagues where he may be the top pickup, especially leagues that are like 14, 16 teams. I mean, he was playing 13 minutes a game he's only played 3 games so far this year. So there's a good chance that he's available out there for free, even in some deeper leagues.
That could be true, and that I'm much more interested in. Let's go to the other side of this trade. Man, so someone in Minnesota is going to be a lot happier, and I'm guessing that someone is Karl Anthony Towns, who, if you hadn't already bought low on by now, which was going to be a hard thing to do anyway, because someone wasted their first pick on, I wouldn't say waste, actually. Someone spent their first pick on Karl Anthony Towns. Weird start to the season with all the drama. If you can snag Karl Anthony Towns still for a second-round pick, I would, because Karl Anthony Towns is going to have a monster year just like he always does. And now that Jimmy's gone, all positive for Karl Anthony Towns.
So I wrote a buy low article for Fantasy Pros last week, and this was before the trade even happened. I made the statement in my sell section that I was selling Joel Embiid, and I said, if you value Karl Anthony Towns ahead of Joel Embiid on draft day, which you should have,
yes,
why would you not make that move today? Like, yeah, Joel Embiid's had a great 10 games, but I feel like that was just a wise move to make, and now I think that move looks even better. And I think there's a lot of leagues where you can make that move. Like, people see Embiid's numbers, and people get really hyped about Embiid because he talks the trash and he does a lot of amazing things that other people can't do. Well, people forget Karl Anthony Towns can do a lot of those same things, and he's a lot better at some of those, including shooting three-pointers. Like, Towns is the best three-point shooting big man in the NBA. Joel Embiid shoots three-pointers, but he's really not that efficient at it. I just think Karl Anthony Towns, especially going back to that number one role by himself, is probably back in the top 5 players. So if you can buy him for anything outside of that, I would do that.
Yeah, definitely. If you hadn't got him by now, I know he had that blow up game, 39 points or whatever. Really good stats across the board. Like, Karl Anthony Towns was always going to come back. So I think it's too late because
and Monday
night's
definitely your last chance because they play tonight on Monday night, and such that they're not going to have Jeff Teague. They're not going to probably have any of the guys from the trade quite yet because the call doesn't go in until tomorrow morning. So I don't know if those guys will even be ready to play. He will probably go off, so expect that.
Yeah, I also like, we've said this quite a few times, Jeff Teague, even though he's been injured, he's been out for a while. And, the injury doesn't look like it doesn't look like it's going to be too serious. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is going to be on and off Jeff Teague throughout the rest of the year kind of thing. I don't think it's going to be that. I mean, you got to worry about Derrick Rose throwback year. That's the only thing Jeff Teague's got to worry about.
So Tibbs said on Saturday when they played that Jeff Teague was close to returning, and he thought that it would happen within the next couple games. Now, do we believe that or not? That's up to you, right? The words came out of his mouth. That's all I'll say.
I mean, right? I don't see a reason Tibbs is messing around with Jeff Teague's return,
Yeah, no, I mean, we don't have any reason to believe that he lied, but, like, it wouldn't be the first coach who said something and was either misinformed or just threw a curveball. You know what I mean? Like, take it for what it's worth, I guess is my point.
They're taking it day by day, right? And still, when Jeff Teague comes back, he was underrated last year, and we thought he was still underrated this year. He hasn't played at all, so the owner's probably not too happy about him. We had him in our buy low segment. His value improves with Jimmy Butler out. You've seen it last year when Jimmy Butler was injured. Jeff Teague takes more of the ball handling and asserts himself more on the offensive end. And that's always a good thing for fantasy basketball.
Well, and the pieces probably just fit a little better around him too, right? The guy like Covington, who's more of a spot-up three-point shooter.
Yep.
And so, like, the pieces also align a little bit better for Jeff Teague to maximize his Jeff Teague-ness.
That is Jeff Teague-ness should be the verb of the day. And someone who's got way less Jeff Teague-ness than Jeff Teague, Robert Covington, who is going to start and is going to play extra minutes. That's a positive for Bob Covington. I'm not going to go out and say all of a sudden this jumps him into another tier of player. I think Bob Covington's going to do what he does, which is really good steals and really good threes, and is very streaky. And I would continue to own Bob Covington. I wouldn't sell him. I don't think his value definitely isn't going down. If anything, it's going a little bit up with a little bit of bump in minutes.
I'm with you there. And I also think, too, that on this team, he may just fit a little bit better.
A little more traditional team.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I'm a big fan of Bob Covington. You know that. And I think that if Bob Covington finishes outside the top 60, I'd be really, really surprised.
So this is the guy I find most interesting with this trade, because I'm pretty sure I haven't seen a consensus about what Dario Saric's role is going to be in Minnesota. We're going to find out, right? But just with my insider knowledge of going to too many Bulls games during the Thibodeau era, I have a feeling he's probably going to be pretty stubborn about putting Dario Saric into the starting lineup. I still think Taj Gibson is going to be the guy who gets the most minutes moving forward, at least in the short term.
So this is really where this trade gets maybe the most interesting for fantasy, because we have no idea.
And Dario Saric is a really, really nice fantasy player.
And so here's the crazy thing about Dario Saric. He was a very poor shooter from both the 3-point and field goal his first year, and then he really bumped those efficiencies up last year. So I don't know that we really even know what Dario Saric is at this point. So he's still 24 years old. He's shown a lot of talent and skill in Philly. I don't know. I mean, Taj Gibson's getting up there. We've seen him play Taj Gibson off the bench before, but in his time in Minnesota, he started Taj Gibson the entire time.
Taj Gibson is the most, and has been for a couple of years, the most underrated NBA player in the entire league. The guy is just always in the right spot. He is always working hard. He's improved his game slightly every single year.
Well, and here's the
Saric is just more of a all-around talent, and you want to see him play those big minutes, right? But even in 30 minutes this year in Philly, he's been mediocre.
Well, his shot has not been falling, and it's only 13 games, so we should freak out too much about that. No. But he's shooting 36%. Like, that's not going to hold. Here's the crazy thing, though, and this I think is worth mentioning, is Tibbs doesn't split minutes. Tibbs plays his starters 35 and his bench the other 13. So that's scary, right? That's scary to have either one of these guys at this point, because we don't really know who's going to get it, and whoever gets it's probably going to get all the value, and the other guy's going to get no value. So
yeah, and it's a Gorgie Dang situation where if Gorgie Dang played like 22 minutes, he was not standard league relevant, and if he played 29 minutes, he was. And I feel like Dario Saric is the same way. If he plays 30 minutes, he's standard league relevant. If he's going to play 21, 20, he's not. I think this could go one of two ways, right? Taj Gibson is the slow and steady, always going to get you almost a block, almost a steal. Just really, really solid contributor, but like a bottom of your standard league contributor. Even though he is consistent, there is a risk reward here with Dario Saric, and I would take that risk reward. If he's available on a waiver wire, I'd pick him up and hold him. If he's not, trading him is going to be a little bit difficult. And I think your best case scenario is that Thibodeau doesn't play him right off the back, which is going to completely negate that dude's value. And that owner is going to look to either drop him, of which you could go on the waiver wire, or after this first game or two, if Dario Saric's not playing very minutes, offer that owner the guy at the bottom of your bench and see if he takes the bait, because there could be a time period where Thibodeau does not trust Dario Saric until he sees him practicing for 14 hours a day, which is what Tibbs demands. And once he sees the commitment from Saric, he makes that switch to free up more space for Karl-Anthony Towns, or make the adjustment to a team. And I think it's risky, but I think it's worth the risk, because Dario Saric playing Tibbs minutes, Tibbs starters minutes, is a very nice fantasy asset.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said, and I'm still going to stick with the final parting thought of we're just going to have to wait to see how this plays out, really, before we can give you any concrete advice. And anyone who's telling you otherwise is kind of full of it, man. They don't know. They're lying to you, man. They're just making a guess. I, in my weekly schedule primer, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I made the pontification that...
Wow. That's a big word, Tyler.
Yeah. I'm chock full of them today. I made that Saric is going to get the start. I don't see why you trade for a guy like Saric to play him. I mean, a 24-year-old guy, 25-year-old guy to play him 13 minutes a game, but it's Tibbs, and sometimes Tibbs does Tibbs things.
Yeah, Tibbs loves to Tibbs, and I guarantee you he will Tib. A lot of verbs, a lot of using last names for verbs up there in Minnesota. But if you guys have any other questions about the Jimmy trade as we move forward, feel free to hit us up. You can find me at Watch the Boxes. You can find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts. That's WATTS. Tyler, you have a great week 5 primer up there on #basketball.com. And let's get into it. What's looking good for our additions, like guys to pick up off the waiver wire for week 5?
So the Warriors play a 5-game week. They're the only team, and the schedule this week is absolutely bonkers. And I'll explain that, why I say that here in a minute. But they play 5 games, and it's a weird time for them to play 5 games. Draymond Green is expected to be back on Monday, so that's good. Right, we haven't seen Draymond play in the last 2 or 3 games, so there's no sure thing there. And Steph Curry is day-to-day with his groin strain, and we really have no clue if he plays at all in any of the 5 games.
Yeah, and often the Warriors, like, we don't even talk about them because everybody who's rosterable is rostered, and everybody else on that team is not rosterable.
Yeah, so obviously if Curry sits out, I think Quinn Cook is a great pickup, and we've seen anytime that Quinn Cook starts, he scores, he gets you rebounds, he gets you assists. Yeah, so we don't know. I actually put him in this week as my number 1 pickup, and I'm not even sure if that's the right call, because if Curry comes back and plays on Monday, that's going to look real bad, and if Curry misses the whole week, I think it's going to look real good. So that's a gamble, especially if you're in a weekly lock league. That is a real gamble.
High risk, high reward. And I like that move if you are desperate for some wins, like maybe I am in a couple leagues. Perhaps in the redraft listener league, I'm desperate for some wins, so I might be making that pickup of Quinn Cook from the Golden State Warriors. I like him as you said, like, why not? Especially if you're in like a daily league, like, pick him up. So you can get some games out of him. When Curry comes back, you can drop him. It's all good. I'm a little bit more interested, and I'm interested in maybe even a long-term value in another guy on your list, Tyler, and his name is Derek White from the San Antonio Spurs. He's back from injury, and he's got that point guard spot in San Antonio.
Yeah, so they're one of 12 teams to play 4 games this week, so that's worth noting. And then the bottom of this week gets crazy, and I want to say this real quick before I get on to Derek White. The Pistons only play 1 game. So
that's really weird. What's that about?
Well, and here's the thing. Like, I thought maybe they were going on an overseas trip, but they're not. They play, like, the Raptors in Canada the next Monday, but they play, like, on Wednesday of this week and not at all any other time. So
and then they play Cleveland next Monday.
Yeah, so, like, I don't understand why.
Because we even got 4 teams with only 2 games. That's less rare, but still weird.
So here was my question. Okay, as far as the two game teams are the Hornets, Cavaliers, Pacers, Bucks. Okay, so standard 12-team league. Assuming the waiver wire is just a normal 12-team waiver wire. Okay, any of those 2-game guys that you're gonna start, save Giannis and maybe Victor Oladipo and maybe Chris Middleton. Like, even Victor Oladipo and Chris Middleton.
Kemba.
Okay, Kemba, yeah, and I probably should have put him in there. But, like, even Middleton and Oladipo, though, I would check the waiver wire before starting them in this sense. Like, okay, so let's say they both have 2 20-point games with a steal and 4 assists and 5 rebounds. So that's 10 rebounds, that's 8 assists, that's 2 steals, that's 40 points. Well, if you can find a guy playing 4 games off the wire, they only have to average 10 points.
Yeah, Derek White's probably going to have a better week than those guys.
Yeah, so here's the reality. Like, you probably don't have 10 better guys to start than them, but at the same time, you really might. And especially in a shallower league, like 10-team leagues, I'm probably going to bench both Middleton and Oladipo. I might still start Giannis just because he could have the crazy game where he drops like 40 and you'll be happy. But yeah, those are dangerous, especially with the amount of teams playing a lot of games. So that's what we're saying, I think. And then Derek White, Man, I wish I knew what a Derek White was.
Is he Derek Whiting well, or is Derek Whiting a terrible verb? Is that a bad verb?
Well, here's the thing. So really, the only sample sizes we have that are worth anything are from the G League and from games he played in the Las Vegas Summer League. Like, he played 17 games last year, but he only played 8 minutes a game. So throw out all those stats because they were all like garbage time minutes for the most part. So you can't really even look at that and think anything. He played 17 minutes the first game he played this season. Now he was coming back from injury, so maybe that's why Pop limited his minutes. Then he played 30 in the last game and put up a really fantasy-friendly stat line. In those games in the G League and Summer League, he's put up a really fantasy-friendly stat line, including getting you a lot of steals and blocks, which are categories that are always tough to find. But he's 24 years old, and the Spurs didn't play him at all last year for a reason, I would think, right? And he was not like he was super young and this and that. So, I mean, I think the minutes are safe. I'm just not exactly sure what you're going to get from him, and I wish I could say. I think he'll score a little bit. I think he'll probably get you some assists, get you a couple rebounds. Steals and blocks could be good. I would safely say, though, that we can't bank on any of that. And would it super surprise me if Pop played Patty Mills 30 minutes and played him 17 or 18 or 20 in one of the games this week? It wouldn't shock me.
I'm still willing to take that flyer on Derek White. I just like upside's
so
there. The amount of, he's played 4 games. You're right. It's still an unknown. It could be someone you end up dropping by the end of the week. But
and if you're in a league,
there, right? Like the minutes could be there, and the talent could be there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a guy to pick up and hold for a while, that you're hoping to hold. Now, maybe you don't hold him, but if you're hoping to hold, I think Derek White's probably a better pickup than almost anybody on the waiver wire. I mean, he's got a great week this week, and he's got the potential to have a very lasting fantasy impact. That word potential was thrown in there, right? You know, potential just means you haven't done anything yet. So
true. So I'm going to wait and see, but I'm going to wait and see how he plays with him on my roster. Because
yes, and I've actually picked him up in 2 of my leagues, and so
Was it one of our leagues, Tyler? Because I better not have been, because I just got back from Denver. You're really taking advantage of this vacation if you picked up Derek White.
I did not in any league I'm in with you, so you're safe. But here's the other
leagues
thing:
are a little too deep. I think Derek White's probably already up.
Yeah, I believe Derek White was drafted in both.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, Derek White, what a guy. 26% owned in Yahoo League, so definitely out there. Quinn Cook was only 24%. So these guys are definitely out there on waiver wires.
Nice. This week is going to be, like you said, Tyler, kind of weird with a couple teams only playing 2, and apparently for some reason Detroit. I actually thought that was a typo. Detroit only playing 1 game this week, but they're playing their 1 game on the busiest night on Wednesday. We got 11 teams playing on Wednesday, 10 on Saturday, 8 on Friday. So a very busy weekend. But Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday are the low marks for this week. And I'd say there's a team I'm looking directly at right now who are playing only 3 games this week, but they're playing Tuesday and Thursday on the low marks, and they are number 1 in pace this season right now. Talk about the Atlanta Hawks. They're number 1 in pace, and I keep telling everybody, pay attention to that pace number. So there's a difference between a good team with pace and a bad team with pace. Bad team with pace is the best team to start your random guys with. You know, like if you're kind of debating on whether to start a guy or not, or if you got a guy on your bench in a roto league, what's his name? Triple J. What is it? I've already forgotten his name.
Jaren Jackson Jr.
Jaren Jackson Jr. My favorite rookie. Like I said, too many beers in Denver for me this weekend. Jaren Jackson Jr. If he's playing against Atlanta, give him the start. If Miles Turner is playing against Atlanta, give him the start. You know, if you're in a roto league, I'm talking about roto specific. Obviously, you're probably going to start those guys if you're in a head-to-head league, which is why quality starts matter so much more in a roto league, and I'm saying quality starts. Here are your teams, your top pace teams. You got the Hawks, the Kings, the Lakers, the Pelicans. Like those are your top 4 teams when it comes to pace, and those are the teams I'm going to be looking at to play guys against. And we got lucky, like Atlanta just happens to play on Tuesday and Thursday, and so there's a couple players. Jeremy Lin's a risky ad there, and Alex Lynn, we always like him, even though not playing enough minutes to be more than a streamer. But those 2 guys are interesting ads for your Tuesday, Thursday stream. You got any other suggestions of maximizing your streamers this week, Tyler?
So here's another thing I want to say quickly about the Hawks. Dwayne Dedmon missed Sunday night's game because the birth of his child. So there's no guarantee he's going to be back on Tuesday. So with him out, they started Alex Len and Amari Spellman. They moved Vince Carter to the bench, which shout out to Vince Carter for doing Vince Carter things. Both those guys could be a little more interesting, especially if Dedmon's out. John Collins probably not going to play.
Yeah.
Both those guys could see some extra minutes, and obviously both are been pretty fantasy friendly and limited minutes. So, I mean, getting those guys up 25 to 30 minutes a game would be huge for their fantasy value and would make them definitely worth picking up. There's always a lot of guys here that are basically like single category ads or 2 category ads. Like, you can't expect a ton from them, but I think that's a good way to win your head-to-head matchups is like you pick up a guy who helps you in 2 categories and you ride it out. Like, for example, PJ Tucker is available in 36% of leagues. He plays on Tuesday and Thursday. Tucker is always a good 3-point shooter. He gets you like 5-6 rebounds a game. He gets you like a steal a game. Like, he can help you in those 3 categories. If those are the 3 categories you need to win your matchup, that's the guy you stream. If you're looking for more big man stats, well, then obviously you got to go for an Alex Len or an Amari Spellman. Like, you got to know your matchup and you got to know what you're doing to maximize your ads. And I think that's one thing we can't really help you with because we're not looking at your matchup and saying this is what you need.
True. You're going to have to pay attention to that, and that's why that article on #basketball.com that Tyler writes is so useful. It's something I look at every single week. Damian Dotson on the Knicks Friday Sunday stream. Not really sure I was paying any attention to Damian Dotson. Probably should have been averaging 12 points, 6 rebounds, and almost 2 3-pointers made. Why is he only owned in 18% of leagues?
Because I think everyone thinks he's not a real player. They're like, who is this guy? This guy can't be real.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And so that's why I was surprised to see that he was playing so well.
Yeah, so, I mean, he keeps playing 30 minutes. He's even playing more minutes a night than Frank Ntilikina, which shout out to Coach Fizdale for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm surprised by. It's like, all right, this guy had a couple good games, cool, whatever. He's not going to play very much, but he continues to play, and that's very surprising.
Yeah, and I think the 18% thing is like, oh, he's going to turn into a pumpkin at some point, but I mean, we're talking about streaming. Like, obviously, you're not planning on holding those people, so pick him up, use him, get rid of him. He doesn't give you much in defensive stats. I will say that. Like, if you're looking for defensive stats, he's not really a ton of help, but he's getting over 12 points. He's getting 5.7 rebounds. He's getting 1.8 3-pointers. Yeah, that's definitely a worthwhile ad.
Absolutely. There is more really excellent tidbits over there. #basketball.com. Go check out Tyler's Week 5 primer. Tyler, I know you got a new gig, so why don't you plug that new gig?
Yeah, so I write a weekly article now for Fantasy Pros, buying and selling players for fantasy basketball. In the last one, there was much talk about DeAndre Jordan and his crazy numbers so far. And then I recommended 2 people to buy and 2 people to sell in your leagues. And in that, I try to use guys who are pretty universally owned. And so I think it's pretty helpful. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun to do. It makes me think about fantasy basketball that much more. So I like it.
Congratulations, Tyler. That's a good article too. I'm going to have to start reading. Now I have to start reading more articles. I'm just going to follow Tyler around, and you can follow him too on Twitter @TylerPWatts, WATTS. He posts all of the articles that he is writing, all the stuff that he's up to, including his a love affair with the Dallas Mavericks, who are coming into Chicago tomorrow. So I'm hoping things work out where I can catch that game live in person.
Yeah. So Luka Doncic just had a crazy game over the weekend against the Thunder, and they picked up a victory. So yeah, I mean that's definitely worth seeing, the craziness of Luka Doncic. And oh my man, so I got to tell you this because this is just, man, it makes me laugh every time. So every time I write an article when he has a good game, he's had 3 straight games with over 20 points. He just set a new career high in assists with 8. He had 8, 6, and 22 against the Thunder on Saturday night. And every time I write an article, there'll be people who message me like, yeah, man, but he's still too slow to play in the NBA. Oh, yeah, man, but this scoring is not going to keep up. He's just too slow. And I'm like, what more do you want, guys? He's averaging.
I don't know how anyone could say he's too slow to play in the NBA when he's playing in the NBA.
And he's averaging over 20 points a game through his first 12 games in the NBA.
He's a rookie. He's 19.
And he continually drives past NBA players, including driving past Paul George on at least 2 occasions to stick out in my mind.
There you go.
Paul George is one of the absolute best defenders in the NBA.
We talked about this in the preseason. We talked about this when we broke down our rookies, and we both said Luka Doncic is the number 1 pick. Like, I get why you're going Ayton, perhaps, but Luka Doncic should be the number 1 pick. And then when the whole Atlanta thing happened, we were beside ourselves. And even if Trae Young continues to be, pretty good, Doncic feels like a once in a generation talent. And I think everybody, like, it's really weird. Like, the really good teams saw that coming, and then the bad teams were like, he's too slow. He hasn't accomplished anything. It's like, well, no, he's accomplished more than any 19-year-old probably ever has. I don't know what you're talking about.
So the 2 guys who were formerly from Draft Express who now work for ESPN were on the Woj podcast. Did you catch that?
No.
Dude, they were just, oh man. Okay, so go back and listen to it. I'm pretty sure it dropped on Friday, but it might have dropped on Saturday. I'm not exactly 100% sure.
I like those guys. They really do know their stuff. Is losing Draft Express behind the ESPN paywall is one of the worst things that happened to me in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so they did this like little bit on Doncic, and they went through like a lot of the rookies, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Trae Young. They did a lot of them, and Woj was asking them questions about him, and they were just slaughtering teams for basically overlooking Doncic because he was competing against men, and some of the time he didn't have a great game. And they were like just saying things like, oh yeah, he's bad because he wasn't playing other 19-year-old kids. He was playing grown men.
Yeah, he wasn't playing like guys who won't even make a European team. So like those college kids, they play against guys who can't even make the teams that Luka Doncic was playing against.
Yeah, and it's just crazy that he slipped that far. And they were saying a lot of the same things. It's like just crazy that he slipped that far, and it's crazy that so many like of these teams just completely overlooked them. I mean, the Kings, like, what in the world? Just what in the world, Kings? I mean, literally, like that draft class, and they were talking about this too. That draft class looks so good with so many, like maybe potentially top tier players in it, right? You got Jaren Jackson, you got Doncic, you got Wendell Carter.
5 all-stars out of that, and I don't think any of them are going to be coming off the Kings.
Yeah, and then the Kings got Marvin Bagley, who's a fine player. Like, I mean, he's actually performing a little bit better than I expected he would.
Yeah.
So far this season, but at the same time, like, he's not any of those players, and you picked second. So there was like a lot of pots to choose from, and you picked the absolute wrong one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that just to see what they have to say about Wendell Carter Jr., who looks fantastic. I'm very excited about his future as well. Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. We are not that far into the season. It's only week 5. It feels like the NBA's been here for a very, very long time, and it hasn't even been a month. So there's a long way to go out there, everybody. Don't panic. I hope you're liking these segments that we're doing every week. We've gotten some feedback on them. It's all been positive, so respect to you out there who's given us feedback on Twitter. You can find me at Watch the Boxes. You can find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts. Or if you want to be put in a little extra to support the podcast, go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. All you Patreon subscribers out there, shout out to you. Thank you for helping the podcast basically continue and also to improve, because your feedback gets incorporated into the content that we put out here. So if you want to help kind of steer the show, patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. Go check that out. And that's it for tonight. We'll see you soon.